This time it really will be the final vote on this huge tax bill. We are waiting to see this in just a short while. Overnight, the Senate did pass this tax bill, even though the House had already done it. They have to do it again shortly. This will be a huge legislative victory for the president and Republicans in Congress.
It will, but how's it going to sit with the American public? We know that most Americans don't like this thing, and they think that the wealthy benefit a lot more than the middle class. Sunlen Serfati on the Hill. Paul Ryan, though, doing the happy dance this morning.
That's right, Poppy. He certainly is. This will indeed get wrapped up here on Capitol Hill today. The House will revote, take that second vote after that technical glitch due to the Senate budget rules. The House will revote today in the noon hour. It will go through. It will pass up here on Capitol Hill. And then, of course, many Republicans will head to the White House for that ceremonial event today celebrating this. And certainly it is a significant moment for them. Republicans in the White House getting this tax bill through. But as this phase shifts now from the corralling of the votes and the politics of up here on Capitol Hill to actually selling this bill and the potential benefits to Americans across the country. This is something that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had some interesting words about just yesterday.
If we can't sell this to the American people, we ought to go into another line of work. I think this is an important accomplishment for the country that people will value and appreciate, but obviously it requires us continuing this discussion with the American people, and we're all going to be doing that all through the year.
And that definitely is going to be an uphill climb for Republicans. The latest CNN polling shows that this is deeply unpopular, this tax bill. 55% of Americans oppose the tax bill, 33% favor, and 11% unsure. So certainly some people needing to learn more as Republicans make the case across the country what this tax bill actually will do. Now, last night on the Senate floor, overnight, there was a lively debate. Of course, Democrats not only seizing on the unpopularity of this bill, but seizing about those logistical, technical glitches that happened, which ended up delaying this bill by about 11 hours, seizing on these both facts, saying this has been rushed through the process. And an interesting moment came when Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was talking, where he really reprimanded his colleagues for speaking over him from the Senate floor. Here's what he had to say.
This is serious stuff. We believe you're messing up America. You could pay attention for a couple of minutes. 83% of the middle class will either pay more in taxes or get little but crumbs. Is that what you intended?
So interesting comments there from Chuck Schumer. Pushing forward again the House vote at noon today, then over to the White House for that ceremonial event. John and Poppy, certainly a big win for Republicans and big win for the Trump White House. And they were, of course, able to move this out across the finish line without Democratic support.
All right, Sunlen Serfati, thank you. We're also fact-checking some of those numbers that Schumer gave because it's not clear where they come from. We've asked his office. We'll let you know. To the White House now, where the president is planning to celebrate what is his big first legislative win. This will come when he signs it in just a few hours, it's expected. Caitlin Collins is at the White House with more. So the president not going to hold a news conference, not going to take questions, but he will make a statement.
Yeah, that's right. It's a big day here at the White House. It looks like this is going to pass, and then it'll be on the way to the president's desk for him to sign. Frankly, a challenge that a lot of his critics did not think that the president would live up to, that promise to get tax reform passed by Christmas, but it certainly looks like that's something the president is going to be able to do. And we're going to see him here in the next hour at the White House. He's holding a cabinet meeting with the members of his cabinet. And then later on this afternoon, the White House says they will hold an event to celebrate this bill and what they've accomplished. It won't be a formal ceremony where he signs the bill because it won't be formally prepared yet, but it certainly will be a celebration with lawmakers from Capitol Hill who helped get this thing over the finish line. But on another note, John and Poppy, the next challenge the president is going to face is selling this bill to the American people, because he prides himself on being this great salesman. But now this is a bill where 2/3 of people believe it's going to benefit the wealthy more than the middle class. But the White House likely won't be focused on that today. They're going to be enjoying this victory here at the White House. John and Poppy.
All right, Caitlin Collins at the White House. Caitlin, thanks so much. We talk about this being a legislative victory for the president, but what does it actually mean? What does it actually mean for you? Here to help us understand, CNN chief business correspondent, star of Early Start, Christine Romans. What's the deal here?
So here's what's in it. And let's start with businesses here, because this is a centerpiece of this reform here. Slashing the corporate tax rate. Really important here, from 35% to 21%. It lowers the tax burden on pass-through businesses. Pass-through businesses. A lot of small business owners use pass-through treatment. They treat their business income on their personal income taxes. It changes how U.S. multinational corporations are taxed. This is a centerpiece of this. Democrats and Republicans for years have wanted to fix what has been an outdated way that U.S. companies are taxed around the world. So that changes here. What's in this for individuals? It lowers most individual rates starting next year. It nearly doubles the standard deduction to $24,000 for a married couple. So a lot fewer couples, a lot fewer people will take these deductions, itemized deductions. It eliminates personal exemptions. It caps state and local tax deduction. That's very big in some high tax blue states. And it eliminates the health insurance mandate. So for people out there who are buying insurance, you could see premiums rise. So there's a lot in here. I'm going to tell you, it's going to affect all corners of the economy. And the corporate tax cuts, a centerpiece here. Democrats and Republicans have both wanted that for years. The individual tax cuts expire, though, so we will be revisiting the tax landscape again in just a few years.
Romans, thank you very much.
Well, one other question right now, Christine. There are people who are trying to rush to lower their tax bills right now.
Especially people who live in those high tax states because of state and local tax deductions. So a few things you can do if you live in those high tax states. You can prepay your property taxes if you can. The tax bill caps the SALT deduction at $10,000. So if you prepay this year, next year's property tax, you can deduct them under the old rules. But remember, real estate taxes are at the local level. So every jurisdiction is different. You have to check if you can pay right now. And again, this is a blue state, high tax blue state problem.
And people would have to pay that by the end of this calendar year?
Oh, yeah.
Or by the time they file their taxes in April?
We've been calling around to these offices, and they say December 29th by noon. So you've got a few days to figure it out, and you have to figure it out with your mortgage company, your bank, too. You can also defer income for things like commission and bonuses. Wait until 2018. A lot of people are going to have lower tax rates. So if you can push off some of that income, that could save you some money. Pay expenses that will no longer be tax-free, work-related expenses, tax prep fees. You can pay those now, and then you have the lower rates. Make charitable contributions now. If your tax rate falls next year, this year's deductions will be more valuable. And here's an example. For a married couple making $160,000, donating $1,000, their current tax rate's 28%, so they save $280 on that charitable contribution. By next year, their rate falls, so they only save $220. And it's one of the reasons that charities are concerned. They're hoping that people don't hold back next year on charitable deductions.
I don't know how that will go. And again, if you're one of the people who may lose insurance because premiums go up, there's nothing you can do right now to get ready for that necessarily. Christine Romans, thanks so much for being with us. Joining us now, CNN political analyst Jackie Kucinich, CNN political commentators Brian Lanza and Simone Sanders. You know, Jackie, I'm struck by the comments that the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made overnight. He said if we can't sell this to the American people, we ought to go into another line of work. You know, Paul Ryan blaming the media for the bad views of this. But isn't it just as possible that people understand exactly what is in this bill and they've chosen to say, hey, look, you know, maybe I will get a tax cut, but most of the tax cuts here are going to the wealthy. That is just a fact. And people have decided they don't like that. No matter how you sell it, that's just the fact.
And that's going to be a very uphill climb, and we will see that in the midterm elections should Republicans have consequences for this. But listen, they faced a choice. They could either disappoint their base or and disappoint their donors, who basically said, don't even call us if you can't get this done. Or they pass this and take their chances with the American people and a very hefty sales job. And the proof will come. It will also depend on the results here. If companies take this tax cut and give it to their shareholders instead of hiring people, that is going to be bad news for Republicans for sure.
Well, that's what, 86% of them say they're going to do, these CEOs, in a new Yale study.
Right.
So we'll watch. Brian, to you, you were the former deputy communications director for the Trump campaign. You know a lot about the thinking behind this, the promises that were made leading up to this. Gary Cohn, the chief economic advisor in the White House right now, this is what he wanted done. It got done. He just did an interview with Axios this morning, and he said, quote, the president cared a lot about the business rate. He went on to say it was probably the single biggest topic the president cared about. I thought the president cared the most about middle-class tax cuts and tax cuts for those lower-income Americans. What gives?
Listen, I think the president's message has been pretty clear and it's been consistent for a very long time. I can't speak to what Gary was referring to just minutes ago in your guys' reporting, but I can speak to what the president has repeated over and over again for the better part of 2.5 years, that the middle class is going to benefit from a tax cut, and that this should sort of further, electrify, or as Bannon would like to say, weaponize the American economy so that it brings, so that it helps raise wages for the American people, which is the promise that the president made.
Simone, to that point, look, 80% of people will see a tax cut in this, according to Brookings. In the middle class, depending on which quintile, which is the first and only time I will use that word here, you could save anywhere between $900 or $1,800 on average here. You said that Republicans will pay dearly for this in the midterms, but if the average middle class voter is seeing some money, $900 is not nothing, is this something that could benefit Republicans?
I mean, I'm just not sure how $900 over a period of time, an elongated period of time, is going to really make someone, Susie, Joe, Pookie, or Keisha feel as though that they've just had this injection of money into their pocket, and makes them feel as though they can now put more food on the table and they have substantially more money in their pockets. I think it is a hard sell. I think Republicans are going to pay for this, not necessarily because of the $900, $1,800, but more so because 13 million people are going to lose health care. When folks see that, yes, they are getting $900 to $1,800, but there are some folks that are getting upwards of $75,000. Tax cuts for wealthy people are just not popular. And I think Democrats like myself, other entities, the Democratic National Committee, they're going to make sure that when the midterms come around and leading up to, that folks know that that is what this tax bill really was all about.
All right, to be clear, the 13 million number you cited, I mean, this is taking away the mandate that makes people buy health care. And yes, that will drive some premiums up. It'll push some people out. But
10%. Premiums going up 10%
yes,
is
which
not
is a
insignificant.
lot, which will push some people out. It's not insignificant. Jackie, to you, Chuck Schumer insists this is an anchor around the ankles of Republicans. They will rue the day. How can he be so sure?
I think that's a little bit of wishful thinking at this point, because we really don't know. Now, in some of these high tax states, and when you had a lot of the Republicans in the House who voted against this were from places like California. A few Republicans that did vote for this in those areas, yeah, this is going to be an anchor for them. This is going to be a tough thing to get out from under.
Brian, we've talked about this poll of CEOs, and just 14% say that they're going to use that money to direct it toward hiring new workers or whatnot. A lot of people are talking about dividend buybacks or buybacks of shares, increasing dividends, things like that. How can you be sure that this money will go, these big corporate cuts will go where everyone says they will, which is ultimately back to the worker, because that's not what the businesses are saying?
I think we've all witnessed over the past year of what the president's capable with his bully pulpit. Look what he did with immigration along the border. He helped slow it down with his strong rhetoric. You don't think for 1 second that the president's going to use his bully pulpit to shame a business that's not investing in America?
I don't think he can force or shame these CEOs.
Yeah, I don't know that I buy that. Look, he got carried or rehired, then they sent them away. I mean, yeah, these businesses do what they want to do. That's good for their shareholders. Full stop.
Correct, and in a significant part of their customer base are the Trump voters. I mean, the president's going to continue to use the bully pulpit in an effective way for the middle class. And I think to think that he's just going to sit back and let this thing happen, without him having a voice, without him having an impact, I think it's just foolish to think that. He has stepped in at every fight like this for people for a very long time. Why is he going to stop now?
I guess what I'd say is, Poppy, what I'd say is, look, if the president wants to jump out there on this, please come on, get into it, because his approval rating is low. I think what we will see in the midterms is that Republicans will be running away from Donald Trump. And so if Donald Trump really wants to put his stake in the ground on this and wrap his arms around this tax bill, Democrats like myself want him to do it, because he's not popular. This bill is not popular. And the more folks can associate this bill with Republicans, with Donald Trump, it only spells trouble for them and good for Democrats in the midterms.
All right, Jackie, Brian, Simone, stick around. Go nowhere. We have a lot more to discuss.
Not letting America be America. That suggestion, those words from the president's son last night, Donald Trump Jr. suggesting there is a conspiracy at the top levels of government to block his father's agenda. Also, House Speaker Paul Ryan this morning weighing in on the sexual misconduct accusations against the president, why he says Congress really has no bone in this, doesn't need to do anything on this front.
Hurricane survivors in Texas and Florida slamming FEMA months after the hurricanes hit there. Some still not getting the help they say they desperately need. CNN, here's their stories.
We got denied by FEMA 3 times. So we
How do you feel about that?
Oh, it pisses me off.
The president's son, Donald Trump Jr., says there's a conspiracy against his father's administration, and the people behind it are top government officials. Listen.
My father talked about a rigged system throughout the campaign, and people are, oh, what are you talking about? But it is, and you're seeing it. There is, and there are people at the highest levels of government that don't want to let America be America. They don't want to let the little guy have a voice.
CNN's Jessica Snyder joins us now live from Washington here. What else can you tell us about what he said, Jessica?
Yeah, John and Poppy, this was a speech to a conservative student group in West Palm Beach, Florida. And in it, you heard there, Donald Trump Jr. actually blasted Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. He attacked the media's coverage of the Russia probe. And then he said that the probe itself was part of that rigged system that his father repeatedly referenced during the campaign. Now, in addition, Trump Jr. also echoed a popular conservative rallying cry when he questioned the intentions of the people working in law enforcement, specifically the FBI. He was alluding there to the revelations earlier this month that Special Counsel Mueller had removed FBI agent Peter Strzok from the Russia team after an investigation turned up anti-Trump messages between Strzok and an FBI lawyer during the campaign, but before the probe actually started. Now, Republicans have pointed to those texts as evidence of bias. Trump Jr. was echoing that. And then Donald Trump Jr. turned to the fact that he has been questioned at length on Capitol Hill about his June 2016 meeting at Trump Tower with a Russian lawyer, and he compared his scrutiny to Hillary Clinton's.
I have now spent 23 hours testifying about a 20-minute meeting. Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, spent 11 hours testifying about Benghazi.
And then Donald Trump Jr., he went on to defend his meeting with that Russian lawyer, again explaining that it was his mentality as a business guy to take those meetings. He says, what you do. He said it might have been a waste of time, but you hear it out. But of course, John and Poppy, Special Counsel Robert Mueller and several congressional committees, they're closely scrutinizing that Trump Tower meeting in particular. Back to you guys.
All right, Jessica Snyder, thanks so much. Our panel back with us now. Brian, you know, this idea that there are people at the highest levels of government that don't want to let America be America. I guess I have 2 questions here. The highest levels of government right now are President Trump and everyone he's appointed since then, so I'm not quite sure who he's saying. And number 2, even if there is this conspiracy to get him from these highest levels, you know, to not let America be America, the conspiracy would be against the president. The president isn't America. The president is the president, correct?
I would say this about what I think Don meant. I think he says that there's a professional bureaucratic class that is working against this administration, that sort of prides themselves in being part of the resistance from inside, and that is interfering with what the Americans voted for last November. I mean, you know, we have elections. You know, we want to work together with the opposition. We want to come up with viable solutions, but you do have a professional bureaucratic class, and a lot of these agencies that are leaking, we now learn many false informations and sort of disrupting the overall message that the president's trying to get. So I think Don is speaking to that frustration. I think he hits a very raw nerve with a lot of people.
He certainly did with former CIA Director Michael Hayden, and I should note who served in that position under both Presidents George W. Bush and President Barack Obama. Jackie, here's how he put it.
We're now seeing a constant attack, not just from the administration, but as the congressman suggested just a few minutes ago, from other members of the Republican Party attacking the institutions of American government. And it's those institutions, Don, the rule of law, the processes that keep us a free people.
Jackie, is there a long-term impact of sort of over and over again running down your own government?
Right. Well, taking aside the fact that Don Jr., I thought was supposed to be running the family business and wasn't going to be getting into politics, taking that aside, he's simply echoing what you've heard from President Trump in a lot of ways. I mean, was it just a week ago or earlier this week, they all blend, as you guys know, that President Trump was saying that the FBI was a disaster or something to that effect. And this constant erosion, not only are there going to be people, career government servants who are leaving, this erosion in the trust of these organizations does have an impact, just as Michael Hayden was saying there, and that could be dangerous.
And one other thing about this, Simone, and I ask you again, as someone who's a Bernie Sanders person, by the way, not a Hillary Clinton person, Donald Trump Jr. sort of invoked the names of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, saying, oh, if this had happened to them, can you imagine the outrage? And I just sort of shook my head because, you know, if Chelsea Clinton, had met with Russians promising dirt on Donald Trump, part of me thinks that it might be a big deal. Right
yes,
now, part of me thinks that Republicans in Congress might be investigating. So is that comparison apt here?
No, the comparison is not apt, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. Everybody knows that if a foreign entity approaches you, you kind of need to ring the alarm and tell the FBI. And there is reporting out there that says the FBI told the Trump campaign that they could be susceptible to some type of Russian contact. And if anything were to happen, call us and let us know. And this was after we know that this meeting that Don Jr. had happened. So this is just absolutely ridiculous. And I'm absolutely tired of Donald Trump and his children and whomever else in the administration playing the victim here. A lot of these errors are unforced errors. These are things that the Trump administration, that Donald Trump himself have brought upon themselves. We wouldn't even have a special counsel if Donald Trump had not moved to fire James Comey. So I would just like to remind everyone that it didn't have to be like this, but here, in fact, here we are.
So switching gears here to the very important topic of sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, House Speaker Paul Ryan was on the Today Show to talk about taxes and tout that. But of course, Savannah Guthrie rightly asked him about the sexual misconduct allegations throughout Congress and also against the president. And she asked if there is a role for Congress to be investigating the women that have come forward against the president, including the 3 who have asked for a congressional investigation into these allegations. Here's his exchange with her.
Well, as you know, the person in charge of that committee, Trey Gowdy, is given a very articulate response, which is those are criminal matters that Congress doesn't do criminal investigations.
The White House position on the president's accusers is that they are all liars. Is that your position as well?
Look, I don't even know what all of these accusations are. I'm focused on fixing Congress.
Brian, I don't even know what all these accusations are. This is, one of the leaders of the party, the leader of the House. What do you make of that response and him clearly saying there's really no role for Congress here?
Well, I think there is a lot of truth to the fact that these are criminal matters, and with so many dates removed, I think the opportunity has been missed by many of these alleged victims to have their day in court. That is our process. I mean,
right, which would arguably make it more of a matter for Congress, no?
No, I mean, I think it sets a unique precedent that we should probably vet more clearly than just have a reactionary response. I mean, these are criminal matters. There is a criminal process to deal with these things. There are statute of limitations. Like, the system is set up to work a specific way, and for all we know, it is working. To sort of now have an additional hearing, to sort of to relitigate some of these accusations after the American people has voted and heard these things clearly and still voted for President Trump, just seems like a waste of time. It seems like collusion all over again. It's like if collusion doesn't stick, let's move up to another issue.
Simone, it's got to be quick.
Hold on, Brian. Please. Absolutely not. No. One, Donald Trump ain't win the popular votes. Let's stop pretending as though the large swath of the American people voted for him. But 2, there are other people in Congress that have lost their jobs for the same type of allegations that the current president of the United States is now facing. Allegations that happened years ago, but they still currently are not allowed to serve. And so I think there is definitely a place for Congress to have this conversation. And for Paul Ryan to sit on national television this morning and say, I don't even know these allegations. When Nancy Pelosi said something similar a couple weeks ago, she was lambasted. So let's just have a standard across the board where we need to accurately and thoughtfully address these issues.
All right, Simone, Brian, Jackie, thank you so much for being with us. Again, happy holidays if we don't see you again.
Happy holidays, guys. Okay, in just hours, tax reform, Paul Ryan's dream, will actually be happening. Then it heads to the president's desk, and then he speaks. What will he say? Stay with us.
There are people at the highest levels of government that don't want to let America be America.
Donald Trump Jr. talking about a conspiracy against America. Here now, Democratic Representative Ted Deutch of Florida. He's on the House Judiciary and Ethics Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. You heard Donald Trump Jr. say there are people at the highest levels of government who don't want America to be America. What's your reaction?
Well, I think we should be very, very concerned about what Donald Trump Jr. said, but not at all surprised. This is the perfect ending to a year that started with the President of the United States attacking the CIA, declaring war on the press. Throughout the course of the year, he further attacked the entire intelligence community because he doesn't believe the conclusion they reached about Russia interfering in our elections. He met secretly, or he met with the Russians and disclosed classified information. Donald Trump Jr. met secretly with the Russians and was not honest about it. This is a concerted effort by Donald Trump Jr., Republicans in the House and the White House to try to end this Mueller investigation. And the reason is because there is so much evidence and we've seen so much come from the investigation already that has them very, very worried. We need to let the investigation go until it's complete.
You made a similar comment just a few days ago, and you went a little bit further then, and you also said they seem to be taking orders, direction from the White House directly. Do you have any evidence, Congressman, that the White House is directing an anti-Mueller campaign?
Well, I'll be honest, I have no idea who's leading it, but it is clearly a concerted effort when you realize that the statements from the White House, from administration officials, from the president's family, from commentator after commentator after commentator on right-wing news programs, and from my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, when they're all virtually identical, it's clear that there is an effort, and a serious one at that, to block the special counsel. And we should be very concerned about that. We have to get to the bottom of what happened, not just to know whether there was a direct link between the president and the Russians, but we have to get to the bottom of it to protect our democracy.
But you are suggesting there is a difference between suggesting that all these people feel this way to also saying that your colleagues in House Judiciary are taking orders from the White House on this. I mean, do you think that your colleagues who sit in there in that hearing room with you are taking orders from the White House to try to spike the Mueller investigation?
I'm less concerned about whether these lines are coming from Steve Bannon or Donald Trump or Newt Gingrich. It doesn't matter to me who's running this campaign. But when they all when every one of them sounds like a talking head from a conservative news network, then there is reason to believe that they're all working on this together. It can't be a coincidence that they're throwing around these damaging terms, a coup d'etat. They're saying this is a coup d'etat, a conspiracy against the president. This is Fox. Damning.
That was on Fox. That was a banner on, I know what you're talking about. It was a banner on Fox News.
It was also one of my colleagues in the House said it in committee and on the House floor.
Who said it? Who said it?
Congressman Gates referred to this as a coup d'etat. This is something we need to take seriously. You can't throw around this kind of language that questions the fundamental rule of law and the underlying institutions of our country and not expect it to have damaging, very serious consequences.
Look, Michael Hayden, former director of CIA, says the same thing on CNN last night. He says at one point this will have a lasting impact. I think we know where you stand on this. Let's quickly shift to taxes if we can. The Brookings Institute says that 80% of Americans will see a tax cut next year. That's a lot of Americans, Congressman. So, in a vacuum, in and of itself, is that a bad thing?
Well, John, let's take a step back for a second. This isn't happening in a vacuum. The fact is that this tax bill that will add over $1.5 trillion as is, probably well more than $2 trillion to the deficit, provides permanent and dramatic tax cuts for the largest corporations, temporary tax cuts for the American people. And when those reverse and the deficit is even larger, the Speaker has been clear that the real goal here is to cut Medicare and to cut Social Security. That's the kind of thing that we ought to be worried about. One last thing that's not said enough about this tax bill. We had an opportunity here to take an Internal Revenue Code that is big and complicated and full of giveaways to the oil companies, giveaways to the hedge fund managers, and to actually get rid of those special interest favors and really simplify it and lower taxes for the American people. Instead, it's skewed heavily toward corporations and the highest earners. And it provides the mechanism to trigger these cuts in the future. That's why this is so concerning. That's why it's so unpopular among the American people.
We will see going forward. Again, that bill will likely pass the House again today. Congressman Ted Deutch, Florida, great to have you with us, sir. Happy holidays.
Thanks. Happy holidays to you.
All right, we are days potentially away from a shutdown. House Republicans set to add billions in hurricane relief, all while thousands across the U.S. still reeling from the hurricane disasters. Where are we on that recovery? Next.
The government shuts down at 12:01 a.m. Saturday morning unless Congress does something to prevent it and passes a spending bill. House Republicans, a number of people in the House, want to see an $80 billion hurricane and wildfire relief bill tacked onto that. Cities ravaged by those natural disasters, they really want to see that relief come.
Still struggling to rebuild after the hurricane season. Here's CNN's Bill Weir.
Most folks will remember Harvey for the water, the boats on boulevards, as Houston became a giant concrete bowl full of rain. But on the coast, they remember the wind. How the storm stalled here for 13 hours, spat out dozens of tornadoes, and took apart a town devoted to birds, art, and the sea.
The aquarium that doesn't exist anymore, the Rockport Center for the Arts that doesn't exist anymore.
One of these trucks holds 100 cubic yards of broken lives. Rockport will fill 200,000 loads. There's not a single habitable apartment in town. The schools are 2/3 full, and the mayor worries his town could actually die.
So we had over 1,300 businesses operating in the community. As of last week, we had 360 that reopened.
And that's your tax base, too.
Yes, it is.
There's a big FEMA tent downtown, but the Rockport Relief Camp
How you doing this morning?
I'm good. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
is really just Samantha's backyard.
This is donated furniture. This is more donated supplies.
Where she housed, fed, and supplied dozens of families with only private donations solicited on Facebook.
This is our diaper barn.
Look at this. That's the generosity of strangers there, right?
And I want to make sure that everyone understands. We have received no state, county, national, no government assistance at all. We got denied by FEMA 3 times. So we
How
have.
do you feel about that?
Oh, it pisses me off.
But just 5 minutes away, Bo and Renee could not be happier with FEMA because they just received a brand new 3-bedroom, 3-bath home. Way more than one couple needs, but FEMA insisted.
So when I got the call about this, I was kind of shocked.
You won the FEMA lottery.
I was like, but I didn't sign up for this.
Meanwhile, back at Samantha's relief camp, a family of 6 shares a donated RV, and a woman 9 months pregnant lives in a tent. It seems like the aid is as fickle as the storm as to who is touched.
It is.
And if you could talk to the head of FEMA, what would you say?
Pull your head out of your ass.
Listen, I identify with Samantha's frustrations. I mean, when you've lost, not only you, but your neighbors have lost everything you've ever worked for, it's an incredibly tough situation.
Brock Long knows something about frustration and baptism by fire, wind, and water. Since taking over FEMA in June, nearly 5 million people have registered for disaster aid, more than Katrina and Sandy and Wilma combined.
But you have to understand, we don't have thousands, tens of thousands of manufactured homes and travel trailers just stored somewhere ready to go. We have to buy these things.
One FEMA trailer like that from cradle to grave costs what?
Anywhere between $200,000 and $300,000. And then when it's done, I'm not allowed to reuse that trailer. I can't refurbish it, reuse it. We have to dispose of it.
And look at this. This is everywhere on Big Pine Key. Just mountains of busted appliances and mattresses. Look at these trash jet skis over here. Meanwhile, the Florida Keys are providing another lesson in how FEMA dollars are spent.
In fact, Key West is close to perfect.
While they try to salvage the tourist season in Key West, the drive to Key West is far from normal. And it's all thanks to messy local politics. Even though Monroe County had cleanup contracts in place before the storm, Florida gave out emergency contracts 2 days after, when demand for men and machinery was sky high. Before the storm, a contractor would have charged $3,200 to haul away a wrecked boat like this, but now Florida will pay $20,000.
Or $1,000 for a refrigerator that should cost $100.
Right.
Meanwhile, you can't pay your guys overtime.
Right.
Should we be outraged about that?
FEMA doesn't do debris. You know what we do? We coordinate the grant funding down to a governor, to the local communities to help them pay for those debris. I don't think FEMA should dictate the market rate of the private sector.
Here at Snappers in South Key Largo, they're partying. Everybody here's staying, right? But maybe the best recovery lesson comes from a foul-mouthed bar owner.
We are not leaving until it's really hits the fan.
Okay, you can't say that, but Peter went viral by mocking the storm with 2 S-bombs right before Irma turned Snappers to driftwood.
It's completely gone.
But thanks to decent insurance and devoted regulars who helped him clean up,
What's up, guys? How are you?
they were open within days.
It's a party.
It was a very positive energy right after the hurricane, and everybody is helping each other out, and the government is not doing anything. And you should expect that the government stands up and the government helps, and only help, and only don't be in our way. Just do it. Make it happen. Make it happen.
Thanks to Bill Weir for his reporting. You were down there for a very long
Big
time.
Pine Key doesn't look much different,
Does not
sadly,
look
in some
much
ways.
different. All right, in just moments, we will be seeing, possibly hearing from the president holding a cabinet meeting ahead of a major legislative victory for his White House. Much more ahead.
So cancer almost took away the career of a Houston Texan offensive lineman, but now he gets the chance to play again.
Andy Scholes has more in this morning's Bleacher Report. Uplifting.
It certainly is, guys, and I tell you what, it's going to be a special Christmas for the Quisenberry family. This Bleacher Report brought to you by the new 2018 Ford F-150. So Texans offensive lineman David Quisenberry was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after his rookie season.
Yes.
Never gets old. Andy Scholes, thank you so much for that smile. Appreciate it, my friend. All right, the House is set to re-vote soon on the big tax bill. It is expected to pass. President Trump has already scheduled the celebration for this afternoon. He will give remarks. Keep it here